It's time for the one and only, the premier, the only official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Your Chute bosses are ready, so let's give it a go and talk some rodeo.
Well, we got one episode out of the way, and we didn't give up on you. We're back here, Tanner and Tracy, your Pro Rodeo insiders, as we are ready for another episode of the Chute Bosses, the official podcast of Pro Rodeo. Hopefully you enjoyed episode 1. Ty Murray was a great guest, Tracy, and provided a lot of insight that you won't normally get outside of Pro Rodeo and outside of a very tight circle in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about things in ESPYs and way to promote the sport. I thought maybe he'd go in more to his memories. Like a lot of times you talk to someone famous, they talk about all the things they used to do. And I mean, he knows what he's done, but it was cool that he branched out into something that's more current and kind of just being an ambassador for the sport. And
we'll continue to have great interviews for you throughout this entire thing. And, our interview this time is going to be Tuff Hedeman, Tracy, a guy that, just like Ty, is very familiar with the sport, and fans know him as well. They know him for some really great rides in Las Vegas, and maybe one ride he didn't make in Las Vegas.
Yeah, on Bodacious.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that later on. So that'll be fun to have Tuff Hedeman here. And if you guys don't remember what we did in podcast in our episode number 1, ProRodeo Props, Tracy, it kind of explained to him what it is and what we're trying to do with this segment.
Well, we're just trying to give kudos to rodeos that have done great things. I mean, all these committees work hard. They're all volunteers. But we want to spotlight a rodeo that goes above and beyond and does something great for the PRCA that needs to be noticed, that maybe felt like it didn't get noticed or needs to be noticed. And the first one was the NFR Open, and I know you got one coming here.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just rodeos. Right. We're going to talk about, whether it's athletes, whether it's committee men, it doesn't matter, contract personnel. We just want to, spotlight and show the love to some of those people that maybe don't get the spotlight nearly as enough. And the one I'm going to go with, Tracy, how about the Pro Rodeo Bullfighters? This is a thankless job. I mean, I know they get thanked in the arena before the bull riding or before an Extreme Bulls event. But they're out there sacrificing their lives, every 8 seconds, whether it's 10 times a night, 15 times a night, or 40, like when we have an Extreme Bulls. Our Pro Rodeo Bullfighters deserve a ton of credit. They battle injuries, and they're just out there doing a job that, not a lot of people in America would sign up for.
And I don't know that the average person realizes the danger involved. Yeah, I mean, we've got guys like Dusty Tuckness, who's one of our best ever, be hurt, and Cody Webster get hurt. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, they're unpredictable beasts. Bulls, exactly. And you don't know what you're going to get. And they're called the life protectors, that life savers. That's what they are. I mean, how many times do they jump in front of the cowboy when the bull's getting ready to push him up? They save their life.
And, how many times have we seen where, unfortunately a cowboy gets knocked out, and it's their job to move the bull away from that area and basically dance with them for 5 to 10 minutes until they can get him out of the arena if the cowboy's knocked out and not able to protect himself.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't want to be helpful of getting out of the arena, which makes it even tougher.
Yeah, so we give our Pro Rodeo props there to the Pro Rodeo Bullfighters. They deserve it. They do a heck of a job here in Pro Rodeo, so we thank all of you out there. It's time for our short round, Tracy. This is where we break down, if you're a fan of the Pro Rodeo Sports News magazine, we have a segment whether it talks injuries, whether it also talks a little bit about, just events happening. And the first one we're going to start with is the NFR Performers. And, this is going to be an opportunity for a lot of great people to come out to Las Vegas. Night number 1 is going to be Las Vegas night. They just kind of get the crowd pumped up. It gets they start playing the Vegas video on the video board there at the Thomas and Mack. And then you've got somebody like Lainey Wilson coming, who Lainey Wilson, she is blown up on the stage. She's a huge name now. And so a lot of great performances coming to Vegas, and that's just a couple minutes before the perfs, right?
Yeah, they come out there as like the opening song. I mean, Charlie Daniels used to do it all the time, and the late Charlie Daniels, who loved the PRCA, it was great for the sport. They do it like before everything starts. It's kind of just basically to hype up the crowd. They play like one song, their hit song. But Lainey Wilson, obviously from Yellowstone, and she blew up. I mean, those acts like going there because it's honestly a stepping stone for them if they're bigger or want to be bigger. And Vegas is Vegas.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So it should be great there. And, all those acts, you can see them on ProRodeo.com. That's listed under NFR Performers. Another thing we want to talk about here in our short round, record breakers, Tracy. It has been a record-breaking year in Pro Rodeo.
Yeah, I mean, first off, we had steer roper Cole Patterson broke his own single-season record that's far increased. It was was like 89 something back a couple years ago, and then now it's over 100, well over 100,000. And the year he won it in 21, he broke the record. He won the world. That's when he got his lone gold buckle. He was second last year. So that record's gone, and the money's gone up, but it's great to see these records broken. And Dalton Massey, who you talked to.
Yeah, it just kind of started. It started with Riley Webb earlier this season. He's just an absolute phenom. Yeah. He just keeps winning money too. And then it went to Cole Patterson, now Dalton Massey. We've got a couple other events, couple other names on the horizon as possible guys that could break it too. It just shows how much money is in rodeo right now, and just how many great performances we have on a nightly, a weekly, a monthly basis here in Pro Rodeo.
Well, now these guys, not that they couldn't before, but now the non-superstars can make a living doing rodeo based on the amount of money that's available out there for them. Because back in the day, and I should say like a decade ago, like most guys that were making money were the top 5 or 6 guys. Now, all these guys have a better chance to make money. Don't get me wrong; it's extremely expensive to do the sport, but at least they're getting a better piece of the pie, so to speak.
Yeah, it's headed in the right direction, and obviously we always want Pro Rodeo to grow.
Yeah.
I would say this isn't good enough. We want to take the next step, and continue to see payouts increase. And in Las Vegas, the payout's going to be even better. So should be an exciting 10 days coming up in Las Vegas in December.
Yeah, I mean, it's a marathon. The average pay is almost $75,000. The round wins $30,000. I mean, like 2013, I want to say the round wins paid $16,000. So I mean, they've gone way up, and
almost
I know
doubled it.
And I think the average was 40, maybe 50, right around 50,000.
Coming in.
So I mean,
76,
so you're adding like 25,000 more, which makes every race. I mean, anything's going to be decided at the NFR now. Not that it wasn't before, but by winning the average, and if you won the average, you win that night. You're going to win like $106,000 in one night. So you can jump several people to get to the top of that gold buckle list.
Yeah, it should be great. We look forward to it there in Las Vegas. It's time for our 8 questions, and this time, Tracy, we sit down with a Pro Rodeo Hall of Famer, a 4-time world champion, Mr. Clint Johnson.
Yeah, Clint Johnson, nice as could be, father to Janie Johnson, who does media like ourselves, and Clint was one of the best. I mean, and he's so laid back. It's almost like some guys that are intense, like have that personality. He's so laid back, but can't be thankful enough that he was able to join us. He stopped by here in the office, and we were able to get some questions out of him, and I think people will love it.
Here we go. Take it away. It's 8 questions with Clint Johnson.
They say time waits for no one.
And yet, I refuse to be held hostage by its ticking clock.
Is this land worth knowing?
You tell me.
The all-new Ranger XD 1500? Time doesn't have to wait because you've got it standing still.
And it's great hearing from our sponsors of Pro Rodeo, as well as hearing from Clint Johnson. He had some great things to say, and we're going to continue doing that 8 questions with, and whether we're going to grab contestants, stock contractors, you name it, that segment's going to continue to grow in popularity here on the Chute Bosses. As we come back for break, we're going to go right into our Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame spotlight. And this spotlight, Tracy, is a pretty big spotlight. The King of Cowboys. We're going to go off with Trevor Brazile. You know, he got inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame just last year in the 2022 class. We're looking at a guy that's a 26-time world champion. They call him the King of Cowboys for a reason. He's got a picture out here in our hall in Las Vegas, just cash all around him at the table. Trevor Brazile is, he's one and only in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, he's won 26 world titles. And beyond all those titles, he was 14 came in the all-around. Yeah. So it tells you how talented he is. 8 were in steer roping. And firsthand, I covered a lot of NFSRs, and he was literally like Joe Montana. When he needed that run in the round 10, he was there. Like, he had guys that had career nights to try to knock him off. And it's like I tell people, it's like trying to beat Michael Jordan. Like, no matter what you did, that guy was always that guy. He always had that special thing. And there was no better roper that I ever seen in person than Trevor Brazile. He's just incredible with the things he was able to do, and that's why they call him the King of Cowboys.
There it is, your Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame spotlight, Trevor Brazile, a name that we will never forget in Pro Rodeo, and the record books won't forget either. Our Didn't You Know segment. Tracy, this one's going to be interesting. You know, we have some rodeo people out there that, know a lot about our contestants, but did you know that steer wrestler Will Loomis, Tracy, what is he?
He's a college rodeo coach.
College rodeo coach at Northwest Mississippi Community College. And Will's, one of those guys, Stockton Graves as well down in Oklahoma. It's interesting, how many of our guys are still competitors, but also still coaches.
Yeah, and honestly, if you're coaching guys, and I was told this by Stockton a couple years ago in San Antonio, it almost makes you better because you have to teach them the correct way to do things.
True,
that you want
kind
to
of relearn it.
So you relearn it yourself, and you're maybe a little older in the game. And I'm sure that helps Will. I know it helps Stockton because you're around guys all the day trying to teach the right way to do it. Plus, if you're around younger guys, Will's not old by any chance. Stockton's an older guy.
Tell him you said that.
But yeah, don't tell Will Loomis that. But it just makes you feel younger. It rejuvenates you. So, and those guys, it's something they love. It's right in their wheelhouse.
Do you think he's had a chance to compete against one of his?
Oh, I'm sure.
One of his students?
Sure. Yeah, I'd have to. I know Stockton did.
Yeah,
Stockton was traveling with his students to rodeos because he was trying to show them.
You got to teach them, and then you got to hope you beat them. Talk a little crap, keep them humble.
Yeah, keep them humble. Yeah, sure, old timer, but if you beat them, it makes you feel even better.
Yeah. Oh, and in our next segment, it's going to be our viewer questions, and our viewer we have this time, Tracy. This is coming from somebody on social media. They want to know, have Statler or Stu Wright ever qualified for the NFR? And this is one that we obviously know right off the bat that no, neither of them have qualified. Statler, a young kid, last year got into the top 30 at the end of the season.
He was 18th.
Yeah, gave himself a chance, and
he won Reno.
Yeah. And so we obviously know they haven't, but those are two guys, and I'm not going to say kids because, Stu's in his mid to late 20s, but, they've had a big impact on the sport, and whether they make it this year or not, it's going to be something that I wouldn't be surprised we don't see him in Vegas here sooner rather than later. Yeah,
Statler for sure. Statler's only 19, I believe, and he was super close his first year. He's right on the brink, he's right there. And Stu had a different way about the way.
Yeah, had a missionary injury.
He's missionary. Did other things. He had some injuries. He was battling, and give him credit. He's fought that fight, and he's right in the mix this year. And I talked to him extensively at Cheyenne Frontier Days when I was there, and nicest guy in the world. Nicest guy you ever want to meet. So yeah, they've never been, but you always say never, and I'm sure if they both don't go, I'd be shocked.
Yep, no doubt about it. And if you want to send in a question, you can reach out to us on our social media. That's going to be at PRCA Pro Rodeo, whether that's on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Even send us a question. We'll try and get you here on the Chute Bosses podcast. And speaking of that, we got our special guest. It's Mr. Buck. Buck is chilling out down in the Hall of Fame. Never know what he's going to be up to. We send it down to Buck. Here is our Pro Rodeo Word of the Day.
Where am I? I'm Buck, the official correspondent of the PRCA podcast. I was nodding off there, which brings us to our word of the day, nodding. Means open those chutes for 8 seconds of fun.
Do you want the world of rodeo in the palm of your hand? Pull out your phones and point it at the screen now to download the Cowboy Channel Plus app. There is so much free content. You get all the latest news, highlights, standings, schedules, day sheets, and more. Follow the sport of rodeo like never before. Download the app and get breaking news, alerts, early access to tickets, and more sent straight to your phone for free. If it's happening in Western sports, it's happening on Cowboy Channel Plus.
As we always do here on the Chute Bosses, we like to bring on someone in the sport of rodeo who's had an impact that is far-reaching. They have left their legacy in the sport of rodeo, and they continue to do so. And our guest in our premiere interview this week is going to be Tuff Hedeman. And Tuff, we appreciate you joining us here on the Chute Bosses. It's great to have you. And look at that wall behind you. How pretty is that thing?
Well, we had to put something up there, and that's what we came up with.
I love it. Go ahead, Trace.
So, Tuff, I have to ask, obviously you won world championships, you're Pro Rodeo Hall of Famer. What was it like initially when you won that first world title in '86? I mean, I know that's the pinnacle, but what was that trek like for you to get to that summit to, be the 1986 PRCA bull riding world champion?
Well, for me, it was just a relief because the year prior in '85, I probably blew maybe the biggest lead ever. I mean, in '85, I went in the lead. I rode my first 5, and had it been over after 5 rounds, I would have won the world by 35,000. I bucked off 3 of my next 5, and Ted Noose beat me the last day because I just basically choked and fell off in the 10th round. So it was a year later than I thought it should have been, but in hindsight, it probably made me better, but it was a pretty hard pill to swallow at the time.
You've obviously done so much in your pro rodeo career. We talk about your world championships and your impact on the sport. Was there ever a moment, Tuff, that you just replay over and over in your head as that was one of my best moments in the sport of rodeo?
Well, winning my first championship was again, it was a relief, and you go from being a guy looking up to the champions before you, wondering whether you're good enough to be on the same level as they are. And me growing up, wanting to be a cowboy, wanting to be a bull rider, and there always is that doubt is, am I as good as they are, or will I ever be as good as they are? And when you win a world championship, I think it's finally gives you a little bit of relief in that, I can ride with these guys. Not only can I ride with them, I can beat them occasionally.
Well, I'll fast forward to 1989, Tuff. Obviously, Jim Sharp, who you told me was maybe one of the best bull riders ever. I mean, I know there's arguments out there for different guys. He'd rode 23 bulls in a row. You go to round 10, he draws the bull of the year, Mr. T. Obviously, rides the bull, he probably wins another world title. I know he got bucked off, and then you got on text, your bull from Allsbaugh Rodeo, and got an 81 to win the world and split the average and won for the second time. What was that competition like with Jim Sharp?
Well, I just didn't think I had a chance going in because Jim Sharp at that point in time, there just was nothing that could buck him off. And, everybody always has, an opinion on who's the best and this, that, or the other. And I guess a lot of it's measured in world titles, but, I always kind of look at every guy and at their best, who was the best guy. And I can't think of anybody better than Jim Sharp. You can make the argument for a lot of different guys for a lot of different reasons, but Jim Sharp was just unbelievable. I mean, I think he won 2 world championships because he didn't want to win 5. To me, he loved riding, but it didn't seem to me as important to him as it did to me. Like it was all day, every day for me. And, but I could never ride as good as Jim Sharp, but I could show up and try every day. And that's the most important thing. And if you do that, cool things can happen.
you've been around the sport of rodeo, and it's obviously you've been enshrined with so many great accomplishments over the years. We go back to something a movie that you were involved in. Obviously, most of our rodeo fans know 8 Seconds, the story about the life of Lane Frost. What was that like for you, Tuff? Being involved in that, and kind of almost reliving that segment and that time frame.
Well, it was kind of a struggle and a dogfight in that, they had several different scripts. I think they ended up with 2 or 3 different scripts, none of which I thought were great. What they settled on, there were just philosophical differences. Hollywood will always tell you what you want to hear until you sign, and then they'll do really whatever they want. And I was offered compensation to how much it was going to take for me just to leave the set, because I walked out, and when they were in the middle of a shot, and I was like, no, this is nonsense. This is BS. You can't do this. But thank God for Luke Perry, who just worked tirelessly and did a great job for Lane and his family. There's still things in there that I didn't care for, but I think most people got the general a sense of who Lane was, what he was about, and which was arguably one of the coolest cowboys in the history of the sport. You put him up there with guys like Larry Mahan and Casey Tibbs and true legends of the sport.
I have to ask you, Tuff. I'm assuming. Well, let me go into this. Bodacious. Obviously, you had your troubles with Bodacious. What was that bull like? Can you describe to our viewers? I mean, I know there's been a lot of documentation about Bodacious. What made that bull so special? And obviously, you had your troubles and run-ins with him, and as almost every single cowboy did. What was that bull like just for you to try to ride?
Well, he was just you can give him a lot of different adjectives. He was scary to even the good guys. He was just really dangerous in that, if you got tipped back in any way, and he had a tendency to jerk a lot of people down. I wasn't smart enough to be afraid of him. My riding style was that, bulls that jerk people down, I never had trouble with that, just because the way I rode was, my upper body way out over the front part, of the bull. So I always thought, he would fit me if I could keep my hand on my rope. The first few times I had him, I was right in the middle of him. He jerked the rope out of my hand, and I did end up riding him in '93 at Long Beach at a BRO event, and it was without question the best ride I've ever made in my life. Because, but he was just a big, bad. He weighed nearly a ton, but he had athletic ability that a bull much smaller usually has. But to most people, he was just absolutely terrifying. To me, it didn't bother me, and the time that he did hit me, when I watched the tape back, I'm right in the middle where I'm supposed to be, and he just throws his head back and just crushed every bone in my face. I had about 13 hours reconstructive surgery, and 6 weeks later, I had him. I drew him again at the NFR, and that's after watching the tape. I knew I would never get on him again, because I was in the middle. I was in a position that you have to be to ride him, to make the whistle. And if I lean back to try to get away from his head coming back, then when he comes down and hits the ground, he's going to jerk me down, and hit me anyway. There was a no-win situation. But I think he just developed that, probably late, probably in the last 6 months that they bucked him. He had an injury, and he was off for a while. When they came back, he just kind of got the little habit of throwing his head back, and there's nothing you can do. And I turned him out at the NFR, something I thought I'd never do. Scott Redding got on him in the 10th round, and he did the same thing to him, other than he had a face mask, which he obliterated and still shattered Scott's eye socket and whatnot. And he was retired, shortly thereafter. But yeah, he was a bad guy.
Tuff, that kind of reminds me, going back to that NFR story, going in, when you had Bodacious, was there ever a thought in your mind of, maybe I do try this, or were you automatically just like, I don't think it's worth it at this point?
No, I don't. No, there was never a consideration as to whether I knew I would never try to ride him again because, number one, I made a deal with my son at the time, Robert Lane. He was 4 at the time, and whenever I got home after the surgery and he didn't recognize me, it took me about 10 minutes to convince him that I was me. I had all kinds of swelling, and he said, well, if you ever draw Bodacious again, you're gonna have to chicken out. And I told him that was the deal. But I knew I would, I'm not gonna get on, a bull like that, knowing that I can't ride him and knowing that if I'm in the middle of him, he can literally kill you. So he was just, that was a point for me that there's no way that he was too dangerous for me. And I would, Scott Braden asked me the day that when he was getting on him, and I said, well, you saw what I did. I said, I wouldn't get on him, and I don't think you should, but it's hard to turn out one at the NFR. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't even been competing that week. I'd lost 26 pounds, but I still felt like I was strong enough to be competitive. And, looking back, I think I still rode. I rode 5 out of the 9 I got on, which was, considering my physical shape, was a pretty good week, but probably something I shouldn't have done. But that was my choice. Dr. Freeman said it was up to me. If I thought I was strong enough, then and when you ride bulls, especially at that level, you better have that kind of faith in yourself, because nobody else is going to, and you're the only one that can do it.
What's that draw of the yellow bucking chutes for you, Tuff? I mean, obviously every guy wants to be a world champion, and you were multiple time. What's that drive like when you're growing up and you wanted to be a bull rider to get to those yellow bucking chutes?
Well, there's, I started riding small calves when I was 4, and, came up to junior and high school rodeos, and, always wanted to be a cowboy and a bull rider. And, once you finally get to that level and you finally, get to the national finals, I mean, there's just nothing cooler. I rode professionally for 15 years, and, typically most guys, at some point in time, they're either going to get, tired or beat down physically or mentally or both. And, I never got tired of it. I never lost the desire to get to the rodeo, make the whistle, and get to the national finals. I mean, there's nothing funner, nothing cooler. And in fact, I retired when I was 35, and it was because I'd had some neck issues, and I'd blown out a disc. In fact, in 93 at the NFR, I hit the ground, was paralyzed for about 20 minutes. And, I was off all of 94 and didn't think I might not ride again. I came back and was able to ride from 95 to 98. But, when I did retire I had another neck injury, and Dr. Freeman said, if I have another injury, one level up, I'm either going to be Christopher Reeves or dead. And he said, I know how much you love your boys. And so that was enough. But even at that time, that would have been in April of 98. I was in the lead of the PRCA, and I was in the lead of the PBR at the same time. And at 35, I wasn't as good as I was a few years earlier. I could still be competitive. It was harder for me at 35, but when I did retire, never look back. I don't miss it. I have no regrets because I gave it all I could for as long as I could.
And you've definitely had a legendary career, Tuff. We appreciate you, everything you've done for the sport and everything you continue to do. And we thank you for joining us here on the Chute Bosses. It's been great to catch up with you and kind of just talk about the career you've had and the impact you've had.
Well, thanks for having me. And, I've had a dream life. I got to do what I wanted to do for a living. I mean, I wanted to ride as long as I could remember, and to be able to ride professionally for 15 years is and looking back, I'm not sure how I lived through it, but I did. And now you just get to hang out and got 4 wonderful boys and a great family. And in all honesty, I'm the luckiest guy in the world.
No doubt about it. There it is, Tuff Hedeman. Tracy, talk about just an absolute great guest and having him talk about it and his impact on the sport.
Well, as bull riders go, he's one of the best ever. I mean, obviously, with the 8 Seconds movie, I mean, I know, if you're a rodeo aficionado, some of it's cheesy, as Tuff mentioned, but it's a legendary movie that everybody knows about. It put the rodeo world in the spotlight, especially bull riding, and Tuff's career speaks for itself. I mean, you win what he won in all the big rodeos and the world championships. I mean, he's a benchmark for some of the best ever, and he's in our Hall of Fame because of it.
We just got to say thank you, Tuff.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
There it is, Tuff Hedeman. That is going to wrap up another episode of the Chute Bosses. Stay safe, traveling down the road, and keep on rodeoing.